All right, welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, we'll be talking about the continuous voter registration, the decisions from the courts, what was sought, and what is the way forward now. We've got NLB, who is the convener, Situation Room, and also country director for Action Aid. Good morning. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me.
And we also do have Obo Efan, who is the resident electoral commissioner for INEC in Edo State. He joins us from our studios in Benin. Good morning, Mr. Efan. Thank you for joining us today on the program as well.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
All right, let's start. Concerning this decision. I mean, people viewed it differently. Initially, they thought, okay, so if this was the case when they thought that the court had given what was reported out there, asking INEC to go ahead with it, but the clarity came much later. The court couldn't grant the third relief sought, saying it will just be very few days to, and it would disrupt the processes, which INEC has said, look, the reasons why we stopped it was to ensure that we're able to process the details that we have and people can collect them. So how do you, or how does civil society actually view this decision by the courts?
I think there's a popular saying that says justice delayed, justice denied. And so if you have waited this long to make a pronouncement, when it's almost the deadline as given by the law, by the Electoral Act, which says not later than 90 days to the election, and we're just about 94 days to the election, and you are giving a judgment today, when will INEC mobilize? But I think we need to understand the fact that the Civil Society Situation Room pressured the government at the end of the time for the continuous voter registration. The continuous voter registration was started in June. Online portal was opened on June 28, 2021. And it lasted for, it went into July. It was on July 26th that they now physically started the registration. And that lasted for a quarter, which ended at the end of September. And then, they opened up for 3 quarters, which ended on the 30th of June, 2022. But when it ended, because of pressure, again, everybody was making calls because of a new surge on people on registration. They extended the deadline to the end of July this year. We were all still feeling that INEC ought to open up because it's like people woke up because of some of the elections, the off-cycle elections that happened, and now people are learning to believe that the system is working, that the beavers is working, and so they went forward. You know, we even had a particular time when Tafawa Balewa Square was filled up because people wanted to register. And we felt the interest generated there, INEC should look at it as something they should benefit from. You know, there is a trust that they are being generated, you know, which is kudos to INEC. But they had to close it then because they said at the time they were closing it, they had more than 95 million registered voters. And they needed to close their books and do some sanity because they have to go back and do the display of the voters register, which is commanded again by law. And so if you are asking them to go now and do registration, when are they going to display the voter registration? So it's important for us to look at the Electoral Act and see what happens, because it's an impossibility at the moment to say, INEC, go back. But I think there could be other systems later as we improve the process to make sure that people can walk in and do their registration and go back home, and not the kind of stress that people went into.
All right, Mr. Farr, let's bring you in now, because it turns out that in spite of perhaps the previous narrative or explanation, if you will, that INEC gave, lots of people were still not satisfied, hence the reason to approach the court in the first place. But now that this has come forth in terms of the court not being able to grant it, lots of people still having mixed feelings about it. Could you explain to us then, because the law is there, what would you consider as the missing link concerning why many still feel differently about how you're going about this CVR?
Thank you very much. I think that people need to have the right information. They need to understand what the law says. The law says clearly that the registration of voters must end not later than 90 days before the election. It means that when you say not later than 90 days before the election, it means you can end it before that time. And so we had to stop it at a point because just like my sister INEC has said there, we needed time to clean up the register. We needed to do to cross-check that people were not registering more than once. And we also showed, by the time we finished that exercise, that a few persons registered more than once, and we needed to remove those from the register, so that by the time we are ready for the election, we have a clean register for the election, and we would also have been able to produce the cards for people to use for the election. So I think that when we stopped in July, it was to give us ample opportunity to get the cards ready for people to collect and vote at the election. Just like Ines said, this process started in June and then July of 2021. And there was one whole year for anyone who was interested to register to do so. And we also know that a lot of people had previously registered. All they needed to do was to do a transfer or update their information, which is what many people did. We now have about 95 million registered voters, up from 84 million from the last election. So I think that we have given people ample opportunity to register. And the truth is that even if we were to say that we will continue registering until the day before the election, you will still have people who will come on election day and say that, give you reasons why they couldn't register all this while, and demand that it should be registered on election day to be able to vote. We just had to rule the line at some point, be able to get all our processes in place.
I'm just thinking. Looking at how what Madam INEC emphasized is the issue of trust. The fact that what they were hoping that INEC would take as the lessons from the surge of people coming to register, especially after the off-cycle elections, was the fact that a lot of people were now placing their trust on INEC and seeing the reason why they should be registering to vote. How did INEC process that, the surge which they witnessed, especially towards the end of the closure of registration?
Oh yes, we expanded the locations that the registrations were carried out, and we actually registered more people that time. We brought in more facilities, more equipment, and more personnel to get that done. And yes, we are grateful that there was that surge, and like you said, it was as a result of the confidence in the conduct of INEC in recent elections. And we've always been saying that we improve by the day. The truth of it is that if you look at the elections conducted by INEC over the years, you want to say in the last 10 years or in the last 20 years, it's been improving by the day. And so we expected that people will take advantage of this when we started the registration process in June and July of 2021. At some point, in some of the states, we were issuing the figures of registration on a daily basis. I remember when I was in my previous posting, we were releasing the figures on a daily basis, showing registration figures, local government by local government, and also engaging stakeholders in those places to know where they needed to go and register. There were some local government areas that had fewer people turn up there to register. We had more people in the urban areas. And of course, we can understand because of the number of people in those areas. But we tried our best to expand and ensure that as many people as wanted to register and took advantage of the opening during that period were able to register.
It's supposed to be the display of voter register, and that people are supposed to be taking a look at the voter register. They can take a look at it online, and I imagine also that they should be able to go to their polling units right now. Is the register displayed in the polling unit of the different voters?
The registers were displayed at the wards. There are more than 8,000 wards across the country for a period of 1 week. And we also had them online for people to look at and make claims and objections. But for this week, starting from Saturday, we now display at the local government offices of INEC. So people have been coming back from when we were at the ward level to look at it. And people were also doing so online to check that the information were correct. And if they weren't correct, they made claims. And if they also found registration that ought not to be on our system, they also were able to make objections to that. And so we've received quite a handful of that, and we are dealing with them administratively.
It's important to note that. And I mean, serving as the resident electoral commissioner, to be interesting to know just what interest people have shown in that particular process. And I'm wondering, you know, has the surge been like how you would have expected? Are you seeing a lot of people? Are people really aware of the fact that they're supposed to be viewing the registration of the voters register at the ward level, or is it just a handful of people who are aware? I don't know if you're able to assess that.
I went around some of the locations here in my state when it was at the ward level, and I saw that quite a number of people were there. And what I also found out in those wards was that representatives of many political parties were also there. Community leaders were also there. They were able to mobilize their people to come and view. And people were also making calls to people because they had seen the registers and told them that, okay, I've seen your name on it, you don't need to bother. Or some people, they asked them to come and verify that their names were there. And it was also interesting that a few persons came and told us, identified names of persons on the list who are dead, so that we can do the needful to remove the names.
Madam Eniobi, let me ask you about this voter registration display, voters register display. We do know that the civil society, you know, played a huge role in terms of the awareness people had in getting registered. And even at some point, they were helping to organize voting points, or will I say registration points for voters to make it easier, to ensure that there was access for both INEC and also those who were interested in registering. But right now, in terms of the display, how involved is civil society, or one, in helping to ensure that people are aware of the fact that, you know, they need to go and view the voter registration, or how involved is civil society as well, monitoring the level of engagement that people are having with the voter register?
We are, you know, the civil society organizations are mobilizing, you know, mobilizing their people to go and do the viewing. But what we wanted was you know, and as commanded, you know, should be the polling units. Registration, the display of the voters register should be at the polling units because they are closer to the people. When it is at the ward level, you know, sometimes, you know, but if without a high level of civic education or awareness about what is going on, not many people will know, because people are not just sitting around and waiting for INEC, you know, to look at the register. Some people don't have the information. And so it's important that we mobilize people as much as we can. There has to be a lot of, you know, mobilization by INEC itself. And that's why the role of the National Orientation Agency is missing. You know, in terms of civic education, they are the ones in charge. And so there has to be a collaboration between the agencies, because it's important to energize more people. Not everybody have television. You know, a lot of people are on radio. You know, not many of them are also on radio, and so to reach out to people to be able to come. And that's what we worry about, you know, the time left to even collect the PVCs, those who have the new registrants, how they collect the PVCs. So we are much, you know, more worried about the time left before, you know, the election, and we have to all get ready. So we are even holding a stakeholders meeting with INEC today. That's the civil society situation room, on, you know, the dialogue towards the election, the readiness of INEC, and to engage further and to clear some of the things that we feel So there is a lot of mobilization going on. But civil society is not government. There are arms that are meant to do some of the things they do. The media is doing a great job, and so well done. I know you have followed all of these things through. And so, you know, there's a lot more that we can do to make sure that people are aware.
Yeah, people expect so much of INEC, actually, because after, I keep highlighting this, after all that resource allocations and improved budgetary allocation, there has to be a lot of improvements, huge ones. But let's bring in our colleagues from Lagos. They've got questions for both of you. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Madam, let me begin with you. You began by, giving us a timeline of how the process had been before INEC had to suspend the process, the voter registration exercise earlier on. And you said that you noted that, there was a surge at some point, and you believe it was something good that should have been milked or taken advantage of by every one of us in the system. The question then is, what else or what more could have been done that wasn't done? And what should be done now in order to encourage people to do what INEC is asking, which is helping to mop up or clean up the voter register? What are the things that people are expected to do to help INEC clean up the voter register, so to speak? Because, of course, the allegations making the rounds about underage voters already on the register and all of that. So if INEC or even youth in the civil society couldn't sufficiently mobilize people to do the needful as and when due, how do we ensure that that is done now? What do we need to do to encourage people to get going about this in order for us to have the most credible election ever?
Thank you very much. We are expecting so much from INEC. Who is INEC? We need to look at who is INEC. INEC is a commission, and it's made up of Nigerians as staff of the commission, including the chairman. What is the quality of each citizen needs to be looked at. Because we are all together. If at every level that we are, everyone needs to stand upright for Nigeria, from the perspective of where you are and from what you do, even the INEC staff. When you are looking at the underage voters that are now being, looked at, those are INEC staff, and I know that in the past, where INEC staff have done something wrong and they are caught, there are sanctions that are meted to them. And so what we are having here now, if at this point, you are having a court judgment that says, go back to CVR, and start registering again, I think it's a distraction. But though the law must have its way to make the pronouncement, but we are almost down the line before they prepare themselves. They haven't even received the court judgment, which means this is a complete distraction again. But not that we are happy. I think there's one statement, that was made earlier, that people have started believing in INEC again. A lot of people weren't voting before because they feel their votes have been counted already. But the days for ballot snatching is over, and people are getting to know that. People have been sensitized. And the fact that people are now believing in the system is something that we have to celebrate. And that's why people want to vote. And so, unfortunately, the time everybody started gingering towards, and I think that has to do with some of the things that happened during the primaries. The primaries for political parties that were dollarized, not even with Naira, but the kind of corruption that happened, and nobody was arrested. We heard of corruption, but nobody was arrested. You could feel it, you could smell it, but nobody was arrested. And so I think the young people woke up the next morning to say, look, this country belongs to us. And when you have a population of young people, more than 62% of the population, if they wake up and they get it right, if they get the right knowledge and the high tech that is now, the young people will choose the people that will come on board.
Madam,
so I think we have to continuously work.
I think the question that I'm asking is actually in the mobilization, in getting people to be interested on time. These things happen, quite frequently when government or any ministry, department, or agency comes up with an idea. For instance, this issue of voter registration isn't the only one we had a challenge with. You remember, of course, the time that government also talked about people registering, for their national identity number and all of that. That wasn't done for a very, very long time until there was an ultimatum. Now we have another ultimatum on our hands. There is a time that INEC is going to have to stop the display of the voter register, and then other things on the timeline of INEC will continue. So I'm just asking and wondering how you think we can mobilize our people to do the needful on time so that we do not have another pressure on our hands or a surge, as you put it earlier.
I think that is why the civil society organizations are mobilizing. And that includes, there's a lot of work that is being done by the media. There's a lot of work that was being done, in different environments. But INEC voter registration section also have a duty to educate Nigerians. But again, that's why I mentioned the National Orientation Agency, that we need to get to the people. When I was growing up, we had this big van by the Ministry of Information that when they want to get to any corner of Nigeria, they had these big Land Rovers, that had big tires that can go to any corner, any place they want to go. But are they doing that now? We have representation in the 774 local governments, and there are political scientists that are manning those positions. They can't go to that level. The civil society organizations, we try so hard. We mobilize, we write proposals, pleading for money so that we can go out to different corners. And some of the development partners, a lot of them, they are doing a lot of work. We have been working in collaboration with so many, with the EU, with FCDO, with different, organizations, Global Affairs Canada, a host of organizations, development partners that civil society, they are trying. But we are not government. We will continue to try. We'll try harder. And we always, talk to the authorities. And that's why we are having a meeting today with INEC again to further engage, to look at the strategies that we have in place, to reach out to the voters. I remember when we were having Osun election, some of the, the collection of the PVCs was taken to the ward level. At a point it was at the local government level, but we had to plead with them to go back to, the ward levels, because the poverty in Nigeria now, when we are receiving, even the current figure, which is not too current, that 133 million Nigerians are living below the poverty line. And then we have 95 million registrants now. For them to get to collect, not everybody, of course, more than about 10 million, voter cards, or about 12 million, will be collected. But how many of them have access? How many of them can afford to go to the local government headquarters and ward level? So all of these processes we're engaging and we're monitoring, and we are hoping that we can get, credible elections. The security agencies are also called to do their duties, to stand upright for Nigeria, because there is a lot that is going on, within the security, or, they have showed improvement. We hope they improve just like INEC has improved. We hope that INEC will also keep watch on their own, staff, and make sure that anybody who is found corrupted, because the issue of corruption is down, and we need to have sanctions that can challenge people.
Well, Mr. Efanga,
so the struggle continues.
Yes. Well, let me ask Mr. Efanga, from your experience as the rec in Edo State, you may want to respond to one or two things that Madam Obi said earlier, in her response to that question, and you perhaps want to also take up that question on whether or not INEC is overwhelmed in the job of voter mobilization, because now there is an expectation of INEC from Nigerians to help, as to use the word you use, clean up the voter register. The question is, how is INEC getting that done to mobilize people to be a part of that process of helping INEC to clean up the voter register so that the election of 2023 can be credible?
Okay, thank you. I think the starting point is for us to agree that the election is a huge project of Nigerians and for Nigerians. And every one of us as Nigerians sitting in different locations are involved in this. There's a responsibility expected of those who want to vote to come out and register when it's time for them to register, to come and check their names, to come and pick their voters' cards when it's ready. There's also responsibility on the media, what you're doing, giving us an opportunity to talk to the people. And there's also responsibility on security agencies, there's responsibility on INEC officials. The point is that all of us involved in this process are Nigerians, and our attitude will reflect on the quality of election at every level. Like I tell people, election is a reflection of the kind and quality of people you have in any society. So if people don't show enough interest in all the processes, then it would not be as successful as we want it to be. You've talked about our involvement in mobilizing citizens and getting them involved in this process. We've been doing this over the years. We've been doing this during this continuous voter registration. We're doing this. We're going to the local government areas. We were going to the wards. We were engaging with different stakeholders at different levels. We were engaging with the religious bodies. We were engaging with the traditional institutions and the media, every segment of the society in getting them involved. I am sure that nobody would say at this stage in Nigeria that they are not aware of the key issues about the election, the dates of the elections, what we are doing now, that people are collecting the voters' cards right now. The remaining voters' cards for those who registered or did the transfers this year would be ready in the next few weeks, and people will also be able to collect them. And like we always do, collection will continue until very close to the election. I think over the years, people even collect the voters' card even on the week of the election. So we are doing a lot of things. We expect people, wherever they sit in the electoral process, to do the right thing. So Madam INEC talked about what happened during the party primaries and how some people were dissatisfied, the citizens were dissatisfied, and now that also bolstered them to want to participate more in the election, and so more people were coming to register. All this is a reflection of the attitude of us as Nigerian citizens towards the election project. And on a part of INEC, we are doing all we can to ensure that everybody who wants to vote, given a fair chance to vote, we did that with the registration, and the voters' cards will also be available for them to pick up.
Well, Mr. Fanga, still more issues to raise, really. Election is big, indeed, bedrock of our democracy. You know, questions about the upload of results, INEC server, the IREV, questions about possible compromise on what INEC is doing. And don't forget the issues of underage voters that have been put out there. So we'll go to break now, and when we return, we'll take on these issues. So please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Let's continue our conversation. We still have Madam NLB in our Abuja studio, as well as Mr. Oboy Fanga, who joins us from our Benin studio as well. Mr. Fanga, before that break, I want to take you up on some issues. So let's try to take them as we can, as much as we can. And I'll start with, a question was raised. I'd like you to quickly respond to it, that how easy or difficult is it for INEC to move PVC collections to the ward level such that it's easier for people? Or some even say maybe do it by courier. I mean, some people may not have that time or that access. I mean, if they fulfill the right, kind of requirements. So how hard is it? And they will pay for it, by the way, to have it delivered to them at their workplace or at their house. How hard, or do I say how easy, is it to do that? Just quickly on that one.
Let me just say that none of our services is paid for by the beneficiaries. So we don't expect the voters, the registered voters, to pay to collect their voters' cards, and so we would not put the cost on them by sending by courier. And also, you need to collect your card personally. We do not yet have a system of postal service in this country that you can trust with that, such that people will accept that they receive their cards personally. We don't want to run into situations where people said their cards were not delivered by the delivery agency or that some other person collected on their behalf, because you must collect by yourself. That is why we take it sometimes to the wards. And right now it's at the local government level. We also take them to the wards. Sometimes when we had the display of the preliminary voters list in the wards, we actually had the cards there for people to collect. And as we go towards the election, we'll be doing more of that. Just like when we were doing the registration, we went around the wards to do the registration at some point. We will still do that. And if people say they are too busy to come and pick their cards, eventually they will still have to come to those areas to pick their cards or to vote in the election. So it's just to prioritize. But like I said, as we go closer to the elections, we'll be taking the cards closer to the people. It is also about the cost in terms of the personnel need and also the security you need at those locations. We don't want situations people will say that the personnel who went with the cards were overpowered or by some hoodlums. We don't want that to happen.
Right. You know, for voting,
I assure you that take all the steps to ensure that people collect their cards in good enough time.
Okay, you know, for voting, there's always the no movement, the holiday, and all of that. So people naturally, whether they like it or not, wouldn't go to work. But let's talk about this major one. And I know you've touched on it. You know, you touched on it earlier on. We'd like you to elaborate on it. And that's, you know, when people notice perhaps someone who is deceased on the voter register or someone who is clearly underage. You were touching on it earlier, but just help Nigerians understand, because, you know, the feeling they have is that INEC is asking for help. Nigerians should help to clean up that register, but they need to be armed with the steps, what they need to do to ensure that they help INEC and ensure that they also may be safe and protected in that process. The point where people have to come forward for objections, maybe you notice online that this person is clearly maybe 5 years old or 10 years old, and this person is on the voter register. And it appears as though those people who object have to be physically present to raise those objections. And I'm talking, imagine if there are even millions of people on the register that are underage. So what's the process? I hope it's not tedious as it is painted.
It's not tedious. You have the opportunity to do it physically or online. So if, for instance, you go online and see someone you know who is not qualified to be on the voters register, maybe because the person is not up to 18 years of age and is not a Nigerian or is not a Nigerian, then you can raise that objection and provide the evidence that would show, for instance, that the person is not a Nigerian, or if it's underage, then we will also try to verify. But let me also mention this. The list that we are displaying is a list of persons who have registered to vote right from when we started the electronic voters registration in 2010, 2011. So for instance, if somebody had registered in 2011 and supplied his or her photograph at that point and has not done any other thing about the registration, for instance, the person has not had cause to take a new picture, what you will have displayed there is the information at the time the person registered. So for instance, somebody may have registered in 2011. It is possible, I need to mention this, it is possible that there were people who registered at that time, 2010, 2011, who were underage at that time. And so even the pictures that were taken at that time where you would see clearly that these persons are underage. It does not necessarily mean that the picture you see at that time that is still on our register is of the person as the person is now. We admit that over time we've had underage persons registered to vote and perhaps have actually voted in the past before we improved on our systems. But it is no longer possible for someone who is underage to register now without the collaboration of so many persons, including the officials who registered, or maybe they were threatened.
Mr. Fanga, just to be clear, pardon me, just to be clear, so you're saying that, yes, for those people who registered, or people who registered them, yes, a crime was committed if it was 2010, 2011, but by virtue of time, those who were maybe 10 years old at that time or less, they would have been, I mean, at the right age now. So you're saying that nullifies the infraction or the crime that was committed at that time. But also, I'd like you to speak to this particularly. So what is the process of, raising the objections and following it through and ensuring that, those who are clearly underage, even right now, are weeded out? So what is the process? Because it's still not clear. So if I do it online, raise objection online, would I have to come physically? Would you call the person who was registered, ask them to provide some sort of identification? How does it work so Nigerians can understand, please?
Well, okay, so yes, if you do it online, you would make an objection as to why the person is on the voters list, and you will give your reason for that the person is underage or the person is not a Nigerian. Okay, those are basically the reasons that you would place for someone, or the person is dead, for the person not to still be on the voters register, and will receive that. Now there is opportunity for this to be reviewed. So if you have sent us the evidence, and then we would also have to notify the person to come forward and prove otherwise. And of course, at that point, you can actually see this person is actually of age, and you would allow it then. But if there are officers at that level are satisfied that in this person should not be on the voters register, then they will remove them. But let's also be careful that we don't run into a situation where people can deliberately sit down and make claims that objections that certain persons shouldn't be on the register. We would not just act simply because somebody has made an objection. We'll have to be satisfied.
Okay, so you're saying, just to be clear, pardon me, so you're saying that if I make an objection, I have to present something like a proof. For example, if I am saying that I know this person is underage, are you saying that I have to maybe provide the person's birth certificate or some sort of identification or something that shows that the person is underage? So the burden of proof is on me. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, definitely. It's on the person who makes the objection that this person shouldn't be the voters register.
So that would be difficult then, right?
Yeah, I can imagine that would be difficult in many instances. But there are some cases that would be so clear that even it is possible for us to remove this person. So, for instance, if our attention is drawn to the fact that somebody is dead, and maybe the person is somebody that is well known also, we wouldn't need that you must bring the death certificate of that person. But for some of the persons who are telling us about persons who are dead, it could be their family members who would now us evidence that it's dead. But I think that we need to be careful that in trying to solve a problem, we do not create another level of problem of people trying to deliberately disenfranchise others.
Well, there are some other observations that have been raised about, but this time is with the result viewing portal. And so we've got Mr. Kevin Fineface, who is a cybersecurity analyst, to take us through how some of the concerns that may arise from that result viewing portal. Good morning, and thank you for having us.
Morning, my pleasure,
today on the program. Well, let's go right into it, because we may be out of time before we know it. Now, that viewing portal itself, because there's been that controversy as to, can this be compromised? Are we going to be viewing those results simultaneously as it's being posted? So what are your observations at the moment?
Well, first, we need to give the current INEC chairman and his team, some commendation for doing a good job. I think I should say from Jaga's time, I've been involved in elections since 2005, so I can tell that there's tremendous improvement. Your question you asked about the viewing portal, can it be compromised? No, it can't be compromised in the sense that This is a system that is being owned by the Commission, constantly being monitored and managed by the Commission. In terms of compromise, except you're looking at the fact that will the citizens, the electorate, truly be confident about the result that will be published on the portal, the viewing portal? The answer is no. Why? You know that once your results are collected at the polling units, they're then uploaded into the INEC central server. Now, by what they do, looking at the previous experience in Anambra and the rest of it, what they did simply was that they uploaded, they waited for the RATEX, which is the registered area technicians, to go validate those results before uploading into the viewing portal. That window of uploading is where compromise comes in.
Okay, so let's make it stick with people who are watching. Let's go right into the system.
Yes.
Take a look at that INEC site, right from when you have to log in. So, guys, can we just take a look at that? Because when that comes up, you are supposed to log in with your email
With your email address. It sends you a code. You use the code.
This stage is right after
the registration.
When you get into the system,
yes,
isn't it?
You go to the governorship election results of Anambra. Let's use Anambra as a case study, yeah? You click on the governorship, yes? Okay, so you go to Idemili North, which is where I would need to, then Idemili North, you have Abatete. You click on Abatete Ward.
Abatete is the second one, I think.
Yes, Abatete Ward. About 36 polling units. Just click on any one of the polling units there. Now, yes, what happened during these elections? Once you notice what happened then was that the polling units results were collected, an announcement was made. Then suddenly this RATEC, some of the, yes.
What stage is this?
This is, I don't have my glasses, but from what I can see,
so he clicked on a ward from Abatete, he just clicked on any ward.
This result you're seeing there were already there are kind of a copy result sheets from EC8A. Yeah. That was used not from the polling units. This was actually, they kept it there to upload it much later, but because some of the polling units agents, the collection officers, refused to compromise, and that blew the whistle that resulted to INEC coming into the place. Oh, this was wrong, and that's why we had the result we saw that brought about the current governor that's in place.
What do you mean refuse to compromise? Because many people thought that once the returning officer fills the result at the ward level, they paste it, then upload.
They don't upload it immediately. The RATEC and the collection officer goes to the ward for further collation. It's in the process of going to the ward that things happen along the road. And so if results are not immediately uploaded simultaneously, as they do to the server and into the viewing portal, it means that it will be compromised. And so I listened to the national chairman. He said BVAS are going to be used. I listened to Bank, BVAS is going to be used. Yes, BVAS is going to be used. We don't doubt it. But what Nigerians are asking to say is that if you're going to use BVAS, are you going to simultaneously upload the results from the polling unit so as to give authenticity? Because if you're not uploading results simultaneously, it means that you give room for compromise to take place. Now, we know politicians, they have the capacity to compromise at any point in time, to compromise the elections. They will be able to influence. Now, the RATECs are those who are like the mini devils, because they are people that are like the darlings of the politicians. They look for them and want to pay them so much money. If the RATECs don't upload the result immediately to the viewing portal, it means it's going to be compromised.
So you mean that politicians can approach the RATECs,
which they've been doing,
and then ask them to what? Manipulate.
We saw that happen in Anambra. I gave you the statement. I mean, you also reported it in the media the last time this happened in Anambra. We saw what happened, the fight that took place. These people already had results from EC8A and B, and even C already pre-recorded, waiting to upload, scan to upload.
So what, they swap it with the RATEX, and then they upload that version?
They just uploaded that version to want to put it onto the server before it was, because those other guys refused to compromise. The collection officers refused to compromise. I call them patriotic citizens who want to do right, irrespective of the fact that they don't have a permanent job with the commission. They're actually ad hoc staffs who stood their grounds. And that was what brought about the authenticity of result we have that brought the Solido government into place. Without that, we would have actually had the other party as the preferred winner.
But the other question is, if they go ahead and do this, and then at the polling unit, or the ward level, the agents have the authentic results, where then do you reconcile it?
Okay, beautiful. You know, if you notice what has always happened in the past, even most recently, at every polling unit you have party agents, you have observers, and you have the monitors to the commission. What has always happened is that immediately after results are collected at the polling unit and they're pasted on the wall, if you've noticed, there's always a slight difference in the result that is announced at the end of the day. Why is it so? It is a RATEC. The RATECs are those who are responsible by law. If you look at the Electoral Act, Section 64 and 5, subsection 4 and 5, mandating that every result be uploaded into the server, and as such, the viewing portal. Now, what the commission has always done is the fact that, oh, in case there be error, let's wait until we validate the results. The question is that if you have already pasted this result at the polling unit, it means that it's already validated by the agents that are there, by the observers that are there. It's been validated. That's why you pasted the result. Yeah. Now, if you have done that pasting, why are you still waiting for RATEC to validate the result again much later? Why not immediately upload the result to the viewing portal so that Nigerians can view? If those who are not able to go to the polling unit, here's the thing. The commission says the last election, they said they don't want anybody to have mobile phones around, any recording device around. When Nigeria is doing that, Nigeria want to be sure that they can truly observe and have record evidence of if there's vote rigging, all of those things. If you don't want Nigerians to go with their phones or recording devices, then it means that...
No phone to the voting if you are voting.
Cubicle.
To the cubicle.
To the cubicle. So if you don't want them to use that, it means that you want to show that there's authenticity in the processes with which you want Nigerians to trust the result that will come out of that place. And the best way to do that is to have simultaneous upload of results from the polling units, not even waiting until you get to the ward level. As results are collected from the polling unit, as enshrined in the law, the Electoral Act 64 to 5, subsection 4 and 5, it means that they should upload it to the server.
But that's what we have been told. Yeah. I mean,
but that's what they did, but they don't do that completely.
Maybe so. Maybe that was what you monitored in Anambra. It's uncertain if that was what also obtained in Ekiti and Osun, because we know that over and over INEC has said, look, we're supposed to, they're going to be uploading this at the polling units. They recognize that it's not at all polling units that there will be network. So they're saying, okay, you can upload it, but whenever it is, wherever it is that you get to and there's network, it might, it will automatically upload. So that's what we have been told over time. Maybe there was, I do not know, I'm not making any excuses for INEC, but maybe Anambra was a peculiar situation.
No, Anambra wasn't a peculiar. I took my time. I saw the report written by Vanguard newspaper. I think Nigerians should go read that and see what really transpired. It was a proper research job done by the journalists in Vanguard newspaper, detailing how this process happened in Anambra. In Osun, we heard the commission saying that they had hackers from even Asia, up to Asia, trying to hack the system to undermine the results, right?
But that is from Asia, not from the...
That's it, from Asia. They traced some to Asia, which means some person even locally wanted to hack the results. What they've been doing, they upload results from the polling units to the INEC central server, but not to the viewing portal, the IREF portal. What we want, and which is very sacrosanct for Nigerians to actually demand from INEC, Nigeria is like a baby crying for the mother to carry the baby. Now, the mother cannot be thinking, wishing that I want to pick you up. Baby, relax. You must show signs that you're going to pick that baby up before that baby can keep quiet. What Nigerians are requesting for, which I believe everybody here should be asking for, is that the commission should be able to upload the results simultaneously to the IREF and as much as to the INEC server. The INEC server is a storage device designed in case tomorrow there's any cases that we'll be able to get that, so we can actually do it.
We're winding down now. Let's bring in Mr. Fan on this subject matter. Mr. Fan, so could you talk to us? I mean, the huge question is, from what he says, there will be no need, there should be no need for the RATECs. So the results should be uploaded from the very first stage directly so that Nigerians can also view it simultaneously. As it's being uploaded, they need to see it, not the way it works. For instance, if we're on Zoom, the host will admit you, then tell you to wait before you come on. So at that stage, water could pass under the bridge. So could you tell us, address these concerns for us?
Thank you very much. I think we should be careful not to misinform or disinform the people in such a way that they will lose interest in they will lose confidence in the process. The elections that have been conducted by INEC in the last 2 years have shown clearly how this process works. The truth is that the election would be won and lost at the polling unit, nowhere else. We've passed the stage where politicians waited until collation to try to manipulate and falsify results. So what happens is that at every polling unit, at the end of voting, the votes would be counted and results entered in the result sheet from EC8A there. Copies of that result sheet would be given to the agents of the political parties there. So they have their own copies. And then a snapshot of the original page is taken with the beavers. That is what is uploaded. Now, what the RATEC does, like he said, to validate that is at the point when, because when you finish taking this result would still be taken physically to the ward collation level. At the ward collation level, what the ward collation officer and the RATEC need to confirm first is that the beavers, they check the number of persons who were accredited in that polling unit because it shows in the beavers, and confirm that that figure has not changed from the result that you've also uploaded. It's at that point that that result would now be enabled for people to view on the portal. There is no way you can change the result after it has been taken at the polling unit and a snapshot of it is taken. There's also a copy of the result sheet that is the poster size that is pasted at the polling unit there at the end of the election. So members of the public who are there can also take snapshots of that and have the records. And remember that all the political parties in the election would have agents at each of the polling units. So what even happens is that at that point, those agents have also transmitted the result they have there to their agents at the ward level, at the local government level, so that they also cross-check with what would appear on the portal. So what you have found in the last few elections conducted by INEC is that by the time the collation has even started at the ward level, the political parties already know whether they have won or they have lost the election. And that has reduced the tensions that we have had in the elections. You also notice most of the challenges to the election, the elections that we've conducted in the last couple of years using this method, the challenges to the election have been on technical issues, whether the candidate was validly nominated, whether he or she was qualified in terms of age or academic qualification, or he falsified some information. Hardly would you hear the people contest the outcome, the result that was released. This is because the process has been perfected from what it used to be. So once you have lost the election at the polling unit, you know that you've lost it.
All right. Well, Mr. Farr, you know, even Kenya, when they did their elections, if you're using it not even for the first time, we are using it generally for the first time, but they had challenges too. So when you say this cannot happen, there are questions concerning that, because we saw what transpired in Anambra, of which INEC says, yes, we intend to improve on a regular basis. But this by no means ends this conversation. But yes, we'll have to let it go at this point for this segment. Not to worry. You can send us your questions, concerns. I believe civil society, media will pick up on this further moving forward. But we have to thank you, Mr. Oboifan, Resident Electoral Commissioner for INEC, NLB Convener, Situation Room and Country Director, Action Aid, as well as Mr. Gabby Fineface, who is a cybersecurity analyst. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time today. We will be back in just a moment. Of course, we'll be talking about elections still. Stay with us.